Mississippi State today announced that they had fired their head coach after not really even one season. He didn't even make it a full year as the head coach in Stark Vegas. Zach Arnett is out. Joey went 5-6 at Mississippi State. Look, I do think so. I'm on the SEC teleconference every single week, every week. Zach Arnett in the beginning of the year was a complete asshole. When people would ask him questions, he was an asshole. But I got to be real with you here. Did you really give him a chance? Because they didn't. Look, he's 5-6 at Mississippi State after the head coach, Mike Leach, tragically passed away. Okay? Number one, you put him in an impossible situation. Mississippi State fans, I know that you're mad that you're losing, and you should be, and you're getting blown out. I understand it. But the dude stood up for you when tragedy struck, and you're like, look, man, we got to move on. And look, I get it. You want to win. I'm not saying you shouldn't have moved on from him. Dan Mullen was 5-7 in year one. Now, I'm not saying he's Dan Mullen. I'm not even saying he has the reputation of Dan Mullen when he took over in Stark Vegas. The question I would have is, did they give him enough time? Number one. And then number two, how realistic is it that Mississippi State can actually make a good enough hire to start being a contender? Those are my two questions, because I don't think that they can. I don't think that they will make a good enough hire to start getting – Joe, if they go 8-4, 9-3 every year, victory.
So to address these two things, first, the perception that I understand in reading into this, the part of the reason why they get rid of Arnett is that they hired him after the tragedy that happened with passing of Mike. God, why is Mike I don't know why my mind is just completely lost today. Mike Leach. After he passed, they brought him in to be the interim and then take over coach because they wanted to keep the current staff together. They wanted to keep the current roster together. They didn't want guys to leave. They were trying to keep everything as cohesive as possible. But as you said, he was a bit of an asshole, and it seems like he also, within his direction of this program, was misguided. They, for whatever reason, offensively, completely went away from what they were doing under Leach, which was the air raid, and it worked well, and Will Rogers was really productive. They said that we're going to grind the ball out and we're going to run the ball, and the team's just not built for that. It completely defeated the purpose of him being the guy to replace Mike Leach, him trying to say, oh, we're going to do things my way, and it didn't even work. The worst part about all of this, brought back all these guys that are really experienced. Their defense stunk, and he's a defensive coach. Their defense was terrible this year. So I think that to see that there already was not a positive direction from the jump, there were just a lot of red flags. I also think that he was coming into this with a really short leash because of the timing of Leach's passing. And this was a guy who was basically an interim coach. If he did good things, they would keep him. And if things didn't look good, they would just move on to the next chapter. The timing they were screwed out of being able to do a real search. I think that's what happened here.
I do think they panicked.
Yeah.
Okay. You can make a search. You can go hire an offensive coordinator from somewhere if you're going to pay him $4 million. You can, it's an excuse. Okay. I understand that. Okay. That he, how do I want to say this? Did things his own way and probably should have not done that. But, okay, I'm old enough to remember that he's a first-time head coach, and head coaches should have the ability to change things, right? Like, I know that he moved off of it. They did some different things. That's fine, okay? They're 103rd in total offense. They're not good. I get all of that. But regardless if you wanted him, if you didn't want him, you did need to make the change. I'm not trying to sell Zach Arnett that you shouldn't have fired him, that you shouldn't have moved on. Don't get me wrong here, okay? But you did the dude a little dirty, all right? And he stood up for you when you needed him because you were in mourning after what happened. That's all I'm saying. Now, here's the truth. Who are some realistic candidates? Now, I'm going to throw out a coach. for you that you're probably going to call me crazy on. He makes a lot of sense. What's old Rich Rod up to these days?
I actually don't hate that one. That's one that I've seen out there. I think that that's a really good one. Rich Rod makes a lot of sense.
Instant offense. You have the pieces of spread. You can recruit. I don't know if he would come in and recruit, but man, he would make a very, in my opinion, he could build them. He can win 7-8 games a year there. He can do that. I think Rich Rod, for what that he has done over the last couple of years, has made himself. All right, look, you live and you learn. Now, I don't know if Rich Rod is a guy that they would want to go for, okay? But you did go make a splash a couple of years ago and went and hired the Pirate. Is there somebody else out there that you can make that big of a splash with?
Right. I don't know if there's necessarily anyone completely on the radar, but here's the key thing that you asked this question a second ago, and you've effectively answered it as well. Mississippi State, despite that one period of time where they were the first team to ever be ranked number 1 in the college football playoff ranking, this is not historically a really good SEC program. And I think that it's going to be even harder for them to win as this conference expands.
Oh, they're not going to win. Like, let's not.
It's not a national championship winning team, but they are capable of
national championship winning culture, Joe.
Right. It's hard for them to recruit. The state of Mississippi is hard to recruit in. It's just a very tough region to recruit because there's not as many athletes in the area.
Especially but they can, with Lane there too.
Right.
Right.
They can still be an 7-8 win team, maybe have a couple good years where they do better than that and maybe surprise some teams. But what they need to do to accomplish that is developing high 3 stars, low 4 stars, whoever you can pull that's local, and also having creative offensive and defensive approaches. So I look at, and I'm looking for somebody who's coming from a smaller program, a G5 program.
Jamie Chadwell.
Well, Rich Rod was actually one of the guys that I had written down. So that's why I'm not.
I thought you were going to kill me for that.
I think it's a great pick because you need somebody who knows how to produce success with limited talent and is offensively minded, is creative. I like Rich Rod, but Jamie Chadwell, yes, is the other one that I wrote down. I don't know how he hasn't gotten a big job, and I guess because there weren't that many big openings last year. He's won everywhere he's gone, and he's a very unique offensive approach with the option style offense that they run. I think that would work perfectly. He's a Southern guy. I think that him or Rich Rod's a really, really good fit.
Well, I look at Rich Rod as an example, okay? And now, look, I know that people are going to hate that. What he's done at Jacksonville State, Joe, for me, I do think that Rich Rod should get a chance here. Now, I'm not 1,000% sure where they're going to go here. You remember he was at Ole Miss in 2019. I'll give him this. That 2019 Ole Miss team, they ran for like 400 yards against the national champion LSU team. I know that LSU played Bama the week before that. He was at UL Monroe. He was the assistant head coach, OC, quarterbacks coach, gets the head coach at Jacksonville State. We remember him for his time at Michigan, West Virginia, Arizona, all those good things. I just think that he could do what I think that they want. All right. Now, I don't know if Jamie Chadwell's on the table here for them. If I'm Jamie,
you think he wouldn't do it?
I would not do it. I wouldn't do it because it's an uphill battle. So for an example,
fair point.
You would have to, and I don't think that there's one out there. You would have to go after a dude like Lane to win at one of these Mississippi schools. Now, the question is there's a guy on TV right now that can go there and win. We've seen him go there and win. I know he doesn't really want to recruit a lot of times. Maybe he's learned his lesson a little bit. I know that he's in TV. He's making some money. He's worried about family. Buddy, I'm just telling you right now, my number one phone call, you're going to hate it. My number one phone call is to Dan Mullen.
I don't hate it. And I said this to you pre-show. I was listening to the Cover 3 podcast earlier, and they brought up a really good point. Apparently, and this is something that's not really totally public knowledge, Dan Mullen's son is a really good golfer, high school golfer. So it sounds like he's really liking the TV gig, and he might just stick around doing that. But I agree with you. I'm calling him first to say, Dan, look, I know you want to get back in coaching. We want to get you back here. Here's one thing, though. if you call Dan Mullen, are you not worried that he's not taking that job to eventually jump ship again? He already bailed on you once.
Does it matter? Because it means you're getting back to winning.
Yeah, but you're
don't
leasing
hide-
and winning for 1 year. Like, what's
Yeah,
the
but
point of
you
that?
don't-
You're starting from
here's
scratch
the
in a couple
problem.
years.
At any one of those Ole Miss or any one of those Mississippi schools, do you think that Lane doesn't use Ole Miss as a stepping stool? I mean, hell, he almost went to Auburn. And look, I'm just going to tell you, I know people are calling me crazy. Don't kid yourself for a second that there's not going to be – look, in coaching searches, I'm telling you, A&M's going to talk to Lane, whether he does anything or not, but they're going to talk to his agents. They're going to test the waters on Lane. I promise you they will get the feel of what's going on with Lane.
Yeah.
It's always going to be a stepping stone. Always. Like, you got to be realistic with who you are, okay? I'm going to be real with you. Here's another one. You're going to balk at this. Over the last 10 years, well, really 12 years, you know what other school that's been premier that's also been a stepping stone for dudes? Oregon. And you're not even half the program that Oregon is. Look at the coaches that have been at Oregon that have used – hold on.
Okay, go ahead.
Used that as a stepping stone. I'm old enough to remember when Chip Kelly used that to go to Philly.
Yeah, but he left to go to the NFL. He didn't leave to go to an SEC. Yeah. And Mario left to go to Miami because he coached there.
Steve Sarkisian doesn't leave at Texas. Brian Kelly doesn't leave in LSU. Maybe he would. Maybe. But he's older. But you kind of get what I'm saying. Nick Saban's not leaving Bama. Nobody's going after Dabo. Ryan Day would be the exception because he has an NFL background. But he's not going anywhere. Look how difficult it's been for the NFL to pluck Harbaugh.
Yeah, well, because it's his alma mater, so it's gonna be a little harder there.
You have had schools where they've been stepping stones. Mississippi State is a stepstone type of school. I'm sorry, you just are. Now, in other sports like baseball, no, you are a premier top tier dude. All right, Mississippi State is the cream of the crop when it comes to college baseball. And college football, I'm just going to call it what it is. You're a bottom tier Power 5 school.
They typically are, and I think that they're capable of a little bit more than that. The other name that I throw out there, and I think it's one that you'd probably anticipate, Willie Fritz, I think, from Tulane makes a lot of sense. And knowing that what Willie Fritz has done at Tulane, and man, they talk about developing talent. He's taking some guys
Fritz is getting some play at A&M. Willie Fritz is getting some play at A&M. There's some people.
He'd make sense there. He'd make sense at A&M. I wouldn't push back.
Willie Fritz could go to Mississippi State and make them a winner.
Oh, I think he could too. I mean, we look at the amount of NFL guys that he's produced over the past couple of years. There's at least 2 guys that come out every single season, and that's unheard of for an American conference school. The only exception is what Cincinnati did a few years ago, and that was a total rarity. So I really think that Willie Fritz is one of those guys that should be at the top of that discussion.
We do have a super chat here from Cody. Let me read this right quick. For a $9.99, he says, would you consider these top 5 head coaches in Mississippi State? James Franklin. James Franklin's not leaving Penn State. That's his.
Unless he gets fired.
Yeah, and that's his favorite school. That's his, like, Cody, that would be to you, your LSU. Dan Mullen coming back. We talked about Willie Fritz. Bill O'Brien. Now, that could be a little sleeper because there are some chaotic things going on, but he doesn't recruit well enough. I don't think he want to do that. Cliff Kingsbury is off the Mike Leach tree.
I don't like the Kingsbury pick at the end there. I think his name is getting way too much run, and considering we have to remind ourselves here, before he took that head coaching gig with the Cardinals that he shouldn't have been offered.
He was getting beat at Texas Tech,
but he was also a coordinator. He needs to get a coordinator gig before he gets another head coaching gig.
I agree. I can't see that. They do need to think outside the box here. That's all I'm going to say. They're going to have to think outside the box. But look, I'm just telling you, Willie Fritz. So here's the problem now, Joe, too, very quickly before we move on. You know, the playoff committee met, and they're thinking about doing, instead of 6-6, they're thinking about doing 5-7. So 5 permanent opponents, 7 at-large bids, right? Helps the Power 5. The problem I have with Willie Fritz leaving, Willie Fritz, if this year, this year alone, brother, he'd be in the playoff. if it were 12 teams. He'd be in the playoff.
They'd be competitive too.
They wouldn't be competitive. They're competitive with Ole Miss. They get lined up with the team. Like Joe, think about this. God forbid Alabama beat Georgia. Georgia would be the number 5 seed.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
okay, and then Georgia would have to face Tulane in Athens. It would, buddy. It'd be a splattering. Do you hear me?
I think
splattering.
They wouldn't happen.
They would destroy Tulane.
It wouldn't happen, but I think if they theoretically played like Penn State or something, that game would be closer than some people.
But they're not going to play at Penn State, and
right.
you know it.
Right.
The number 5 seed is going to be the best conference loser.
Yes.
Okay, and they're going to get killed. But the problem is he's going to get in the playoff. So for those reasons alone, I don't think he could ever get to the playoff at Mississippi State. Like, I just don't.
Yeah. That's an angle that I think needs to be brought up here. And the same could go for Jamie Chadwell, who I brought up. Rich Rod, probably not. But Jamie Chadwell is going to go undefeated.
If Rich Rod continues to have success, Joe, hell he can't.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that more so with Jamie, but it would be really hard for Jacksonville State in year 2 to sneak into the playoff. But Liberty can. They could sneak in as that G5 team.
Now. Dude, they're still undefeated.
They have a soft schedule, though. They have one of the softest schedules in the country.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Joe, they went through a coaching change, and they're undefeated. That should be praised.
Not a lot of guys left, which is huge.